everyone. A very, very warm welcome. So today what we're going to be studying is that we will be revisiting what we were talking about in our last lecture, in the last tutorial, right? And we talked about dynasties, right? We were talking about the Khilji dynasty and the slave dynasty, right? So today we will be starting with the Tughlaq dynasty and the Sayyid and the Lodi dynasty, right? So with these three that we will be covering today and the two that we did in the last tutorial, we will complete the Delhi Sultanate, right? So now this Tughlaq dynasty students ruled for, they had a nearly 100-year-old rule, right? For 100 years they ruled. Now the first ruler was Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, right? Now he strengthened the Sultanate by crushing rebellions, and his son Juana Khan succeeded him, right? And Juana Khan was given the title of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So let's see what Juana Khan did. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq from 1324 to 1351. Now he was a great patron of learning. It is said that he was ahead of his times in terms of formulating policies. He was very knowledgeable, like a very intellectual person, very well versed in astronomy, poetry, philosophy, mathematics, and he was a very powerful ruler. He had a very high sense of justice, a very progressive mind, right? But something that went wrong was that there were a couple of mistakes that he made, which actually turned against him. Right. Uh, One was the nobles and the ulemas. Right. He did not give a lot of powers to the ulemas. He questioned them. Right. So ulemas did not like or approve of him. Also, what he did was that he appointed officers from the non-noble families. The nobles were not happy about that as well. Therefore, he had angered successfully the nobles as well as ulemas. Both of them did not support Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Right. Then some of the other things that he did was one was the taxation in the Doab region. Right. Now, students, this is one of the most fertile region. Right. It is between the Ganga and the Yamuna plains. It is one of the most fertile regions. So what Sultan did was that he raised the tax on land to increase the revenue collection. Right? But in this particular time, when he had increases the land tax, there was a famine situation, and farmers were unable to pay. A lot of peasants abandoned their lands, others revolted. Now, as a result, the Sultan had to discontinue the measure. Okay. Next, that he did was that he shifted the capital. This was another mistake. He shifted the capital from Delhi to Devagiri and renamed it to Daulatabad in 1327. Now, shifting a capital means that you have to shift the royalty as well as the common people. A, this was very impractical. B, it was very expensive for the royal exchequer. Right? But why do you think he shifted his capital to Daulatabad? Was that now this Daulatabad is very had a very strategic position, right? So students, this Daulatabad was equidistant from Delhi, from Gujarat, from Lucknow, from Sunargaon, Telangana, Malabar, Devsamudra, etc. Although it was a good decision, but he did not sought any consultation from the nobles, right? Um while he was analyzing the advantages and disadvantages. Right? Now, the reasons for shifting were that so Delhi had a very centralized location, right? And there was also a threat of Mongol raids on Delhi. Right? So they tried to shift, they shifted, but all of this was very expensive, very impractical, right? And soon the Sultan realized that this was a mistake. So he issued reorders. issued orders to reshift the capital to Delhi. Right. Next is introduction of token currency. Now this is very interesting. Now what happens is this was a huge Himalayan blunder that he committed. Right. Now what was happening was that there was a shortage of silver. Right. So what Muhammad bin Tughlaq decided to do was that he decided that he would issue bronze and copper coins instead of silver coins. Right. This happened in 1329. And in value, these bronze and copper coins were equal to the silver coins called tankas. Right? And Sultan said that you could exchange your silver coins at any time from the royal treasury. In exchange, you will get these bronze and copper coins. What people started doing was they started hoarding the gold and silver. They started keeping the gold and silver coins for themselves, right? And they used copper and bronze coins for trades. Another thing that happened was, now these coins, these bronze and copper coins, it became very easy for the ordinary craftsman to copy this particular coin design, right? So people became dishonest. They would illegally mint these coins. Now Sultan failed to realize that people are illegally minting and issuing coins and currencies. Because of this, money lost its value and fake currency was available in abundance in the markets, right? It was floating around, and Sultan had failed to comprehend or check on this. Because of this, money lost its value and overseas trade suffered. The next was Karachil expedition. Now, what Sultan did was that he sent an army to Kangra region in modern Himachal Pradesh. Right? Now, why he did was that so that the northern frontiers of the Sultanate could be secured. He was easily able to annex the region, and then he decided, that if I've covered Himachal Pradesh, I should move towards Tibet, further north. Now, this was a fatal decision. Caused a lot of casualties, a lot of people died, and also it was very expensive. Because of this, the royal treasury was once again in a state of bankruptcy. Now, next what happened was the Khorasan expedition. Now, Sultan wanted to conquer Khorasan in Central Asia. Right? Now, this again requires a lot of planning and expenditure. He also, raised a huge army, gathered weapons and warfare supplies, and to incentivize the soldiers, he gave them 1 year's salary in advance. But the expedition had to be withdrawn because Sultan realized that it would be very difficult to sustain this. And then the soldiers that were recruited were disbanded. All of these measures made the Sultan very unpopular with the military, the nobility, and even the masses. Right? So you see, why military? Because these failed expeditions. Why nobility? Because he was bringing non-nobles to power, and the masses also. So the Sultan overall was losing his credibility. Then you have Firoz Shah Tughlaq in 1351 to 1388. Now his reign was the beginning of the end. At this particular time, the royal treasury was bankrupt, the ulemas and the nobility were very hostile, and there were frequent revolts in the region. The new sultan, he had learned the importance of nobles and the ulemas. He did try to please them. How? He tried to bring a lot of Islamic laws, right? And he also gave bigger iktas, bigger lands to the nobles. So what kind of reforms did Firoz Shah Tughlaq bring were that, so he was a very successful reformer, students, right? He constructed a lot of wells, a lot of canals, a lot of tanks, rest houses, hospitals. He even founded new towns of Firoz Shah, Firozabad, Hisar Firoza, right? And it is interesting to know that Firoz Shah Tughlaq is actually very famous in history for laying very beautiful and huge, vast gardens, right? So he had laid 1,200 gardens. He established a lot of educational institutes. He was very progressive, very tolerant, right? And it was during his time that the Hindu religious works were actually translated from Sanskrit to Persian. And what also he did was that he bought the two Ashokan pillars from Meerut and Sopara to Delhi. And one of them he placed in his palace at Firoz Shah Court. Okay. So this is about the reforms that he brought. Now what happened after his death? Now after his death, after the death of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, the empire broke up. There were a lot of rebellions in different parts. A lot of regions became independent. Army became very weak. And the Sultanate was reduced to Delhi and surrounding areas. Okay. Then there's another, something else also happened. There was Timur's invasion in 1398. Now, Timur was a Mongol ruler, right? Now, he wanted to invade North India for quite some time, but in 1398, when he heard of the weakening power, right? So what he did was that he stormed to Delhi and he destroyed everything that came in its way, and he ruthlessly massacred people, and from the loot and everything that he took from here, he built a very beautiful capital known as Samarkand, right? Which had very beautiful palaces and mosques, right? All from the loot that he had collected from Delhi. Now, some of the important aspects of the rules of Tughlaqs. Right? One is that the Delhi Sultanate court. Now, the court was very ceremonial. There were a lot of ceremonies that were performed. Sajda and Paibos were performed. It was just to show that Sultan is equal at par to the god. Right? Now let's talk about the powers of the Sultan. Sultan was very powerful. There was a constant struggle between the Sultan and the ulemas, right? Uh, Now, because Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he ignored the ulemas. Therefore, his rule was termed un-Islamic. And to gain to gain the acceptance of ulemas, what he had to do was that he had to issue coins in the name of caliph. Because only after those coins were issued in the name of caliph, was his rule issued legal. Right? Then Sultan was the chief justice as well as the commander-in-chief of army. He enjoyed the power to appoint a lot of ministries, officers, and assign duties to them. Then he had a wazir. Now, wazir was responsible for the income, expenditure, revenue collection, all finances. Anything and everything related to finances went through the wazir, right? And when Sultan was out, wazir was in charge of the capital. He had full authority over the revenue department. He made a lot of important appointments, was very powerful again. Then Mumalik, he looked after army and administration and the needs of army, right? Everything related to army, employing of soldiers, equipping them, training them, paying them, was all with the Arizi Mumalik. Next, Bakshi. Bakshi is the paymaster of the army. Chief Qazi. Now, Chief Qazi was a judicial post, head of the judicial department, and he also looked after, the charities and religious matters and other noble causes. Okay. Then nobles. How can we forget nobles, right? Nobles were the most powerful men. They held both military as well as civilian posts in the government. There were a lot of ranks within the nobility as well. Highest were the Khans, then the Maliks and the Amirs, right? Next, we have the Ikta system. Now, this is a very interesting system of the Sultanate. Now, nobles were assigned different palaces, right? And these nobles got salary from the revenue of the palace. Now, what kind of revenue from the palace? Now, these palaces had a lot of villages and lands under them, right? Now, these were known as Iktadars or Mufti. Now, these nobles were usually military commanders. The Iqtadars were the military commanders who led military campaigns, maintained law and order, collected the taxes, right? And from this, the money that they collected, right, they also maintained the soldiers under them. And although a part was money was paid to the sultan, and during military operations, or whenever the sultan needed um, soldiers or something, so it was these iqtadars that provided the contingents. Now, during the slave dynasty and the Khilji dynasty, there were very few of them, right? As it was only these iqtas were only given to very high military commanders, but during the Tughlaqs, the iqtas increased, right? Because Sultan thought that it would be a good way to check that farmers were not overtaxed and troops were maintained properly. So, but at the same time, students, it is interesting to know that these iqtas were not permanent, right? They could be taken back by the Sultan, and after the Tughlaqs, this trend was not followed, right? But this overall Iqta system was a hereditary system. Uh, it traveled from father to son and so on and so forth. Now, when Sultan became weak and he could not assert himself, a lot of times what we've seen is that these Iqtadars became very powerful and, in fact, even became independent rulers. Right? Next, we have the Sayyid dynasty. Now, this was for a very short period. There were four Sayyid rulers, right? The Khizr Khan, Mubarak Shah Sayyid, Muhammad Shah Sayyid, and Alauddin Alam Shah Sayyid. Now, let's start with Khizr Khan. Now, he was the governor of Multan during Firoz Shah Tughlaq's region, right? Then, when Timur decided to attack India, right, that's when Khizr Khan joined Timur. And when he left India, he appointed Khizr Khan as the governor of Multan, Lahore, as well as Dipalpur. Now, in 1414, Khizr Khan conquered Delhi and established the Sayyid dynasty. Right. So, what was happening is that he was basically the governor of Multan during Firoz Shah Tughlaq, but he joined Timur when he came to attack India. When he left, Timur appointed Khizr Khan as the governor of Multan, Lahore, and Dipalpur. But in 1414, he conquered Delhi and established the Sayyid dynasty. Now, then comes his son, Mubarak Shah Sayyid. He was Khizr Khan's son. He had a very refined taste, a very futuristic vision, um, and he also wanted to revive the old glory of the Sultanate. But the nobles weren't in his favor, and most of the part of his rule was actually spent in controlling these nobles. Right. Next is Muhammad Shah Sayyid. Uh, so Mubarak Shah was basically Muhammad Shah's uncle, right? And during his tenure, the nobles became very strong and powerful. Then comes Alauddin Alam Shah Sayyid. He was defeated by Bahlul Lodi in 1451. Now, with this, the Sayyid Sultan's rule came to an end. Right now, what had happened with now let's go to the Sayyid dynasty. Right. One second. Sorry. Right. I was just confused. Next we have is the Lodi dynasty. Right. So now the Lodi dynasty students saw the end of the Turkish rule and the beginning of the rule of Afghans. Right. Lodi dynasty saw the end of the Turkish rule. With the coming of Lodi dynasty, the Turkish rule ended and the rule of Afghans was brought in. Okay. So the first one was Bahlul Lodi, right? He was the first Afghan Lodi ruler. Um, he tried to consolidate the divided sultanate, took a lot of stern steps, tried to remove the rebellious governors. He also appointed royal Afghan nobles in place, right? But by the time he was about to die, the sultanate had stretched from Punjab to Bihar. Okay. Then you have Sikandar Lodi. Now he is the son of Bahlul Lodi, the most powerful ruler of the Lodi dynasty. He took over Jaunpur and Bihar. and he also signed a treaty of friendship with the ruler of Bengal. Now, Sikandar Lodi was a reformer. He introduced a lot of welfare measures. He founded the city of Agra, and Agra became his capital. Then you have Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim Lodi, initially students, he had to struggle a lot against the Afghan nobles who rebelled against him, but he was successful in defeating them. Then what he did was that he replaced these powerful Afghan nobles with the younger nobles and governors, right? So the older nobles didn't like it that they were being replaced, and they conspired against him with Babur. And Babur and Ibrahim Lodi fought the first battle of Panipat in 1526. Um, Ibrahim Lodi was defeated and overthrown. Now, thus came to an end to the glorious rule of the Sultanate, and this paved way for the foundation of the Mughal dynasty. With this, we complete this particular chapter. Thank you so much. Go through the chapter again, students. If you have any doubts, please come back to the class with your doubts. Thank you. Hope you had fun.